Some people leave your life, but never leave your mind. Take your peace back. Most people are not destroyed by enemies. They are destroyed by voices. A judgment that keeps replaying. A rejection they cannot forget. An insult that keeps returning. A person who left, but somehow still lives in their mind rent-free. If someone can still control your thoughts after they are gone, then they still have power over you. That is the real problem. Most people think peace is lost because of what happened. It is not. Peace is lost because of what keeps repeating after it happened. A comment you cannot forget. A rejection you keep replaying. A person who left but still occupies your mind. An insult that ended days ago but somehow is still alive inside you. That is how power works at the psychological level, not when someone controls your body, not even when they control your circumstances, but when they control your inner space after the moment is already over. If someone is gone but still dictates your thoughts, your mood, your self-worth, your confidence, your sleep, your focus, then they are not really gone. They are still living in your head, and every day you let them stay there, they keep taking something from you. That is the real theft. Not what they said, not what they did, but the fact that they moved into your mind and turned your attention into their property. This is why so many people are exhausted. They are not only living their own life, they are also carrying mental ghosts, old conversations, old judgments, old humiliations, imagined arguments, people they want to prove wrong, people they want approval from, people they miss, people they hate, people they fear, people they envy, people they cannot stop mentally performing for. And because of that, their mind never becomes fully their own. That ends now. Because the moment you understand why people keep living in your head, you also understand how to remove them. Not with denial, not with fake positivity, not by pretending you do not care, but through something much stronger, psychological clarity, emotional discipline, and the refusal to keep giving mental rent-free space to people who no longer deserve access to you. The first truth is simple and brutal. People live in your head because they touched your identity, not just your emotions. This is where most people misunderstand themselves. They think they are overthinking because they are sensitive, or because they care deeply, or because they need closure, but often, what keeps replaying is not the event itself. It is what the event seemed to say about you. Someone ignored you, and now your mind is not replaying the silence. It is replaying what the silence might mean, that you were not important enough, not attractive enough, not respected enough, not chosen enough. Someone criticized you, and what lingers is not the criticism alone. It is the threat that maybe they saw something true, something you did not want confirmed. Someone rejected you, and now the wound is not just loss. It is identity damage. Your ego is trying to recover from being placed outside the circle of acceptance. This is why some people stay in your head longer than they should. They were not just a person, they became a mirror that reflected something painful back at you. Insecurity, need, shame, inferiority, abandonment, uncertainty. And because you did not like what you saw in that mirror, your mind keeps returning to it, trying to resolve it. That is why mental freedom does not begin by asking, how do I stop thinking about them? It begins by asking, what did they make me feel about myself? That question changes everything. Because once you see the deeper wound, the person begins to shrink. You realize they were never carrying all the power. Much of the power came from the meaning your identity attached to them. This is why emotionally strong people are harder to haunt, not because nobody hurts them, but because fewer people are allowed to define them. A slight remains a slight. A rejection remains a rejection. It does not become a full psychological occupation. The second truth is that your mind keeps replaying people because it mistakes repetition for control. Human beings hate unfinished stories. We hate uncertainty, humiliation, rejection, loose ends, and unresolved emotional tension. So when something hurts, the mind returns to it again and again, as if replaying it enough times will somehow produce mastery. You tell yourself you are thinking it through. But most of the time, you are not thinking, you are circling. You replay the conversation, what you should have said, what they meant, whether they were lying, whether they regret it, whether they think about you, whether you missed the sign, whether you looked weak, whether you still matter, whether you will ever get the final explanation that makes everything neat and painless. And the mind keeps doing this because it believes that if it can just go over the scene one more time, control will return. But it never does. Repetition is not resolution. In fact, repetition often deepens the wound because every replay strengthens the emotional groove. You are not escaping the event. You are rehearsing your attachment to it. This is why overthinking feels active but changes nothing. It creates the illusion of movement while keeping you psychologically fixed in place. A person can leave your life once, but your mind can keep bringing them back 100 times. At that point, they are no longer the one doing the damage. You are participating in the continuation. That is hard to admit, but necessary. Because until you see your role in the repetition, you will keep waiting for something external to save you. An apology, a text, a sign, a confession, a final conversation, some magical proof that makes the mind release its grip. But the mind rarely lets go because it is satisfied. It lets go when it is retrained. The third truth is that some people stay in your head because you are still trying to win in a game that is already over. This is one of the most common hidden dynamics. You are not only replaying what happened, you are replaying the version of yourself that lost. The version that was ignored, replaced, betrayed, mocked, misjudged, left, undervalued, beaten in status, overlooked, made to look small. And now, somewhere deep inside, the ego wants restoration. It wants to prove that they were wrong, that you are better than they thought, that you are desirable now, that you won in the end, that they should regret losing you, that you were never beneath them, that you are no longer the one who got hurt. This is why people become mentally trapped by old rivals, ex-partners, family criticism, social humiliation, and even strangers online. The event is over, but the ego is still competing. Still trying to reverse the outcome in imagination. Still trying to re-enter the scene and rewrite the hierarchy. This is exhausting because the mind turns life into a private courtroom where you are constantly trying to prove your worth to an audience that may not even be watching. That is what it means to let someone live in your head. You are still orienting yourself around them, still treating them like a judge, still building your emotional weather around an old trial that should have ended. Real freedom begins when you stop needing to win in the minds of people who hurt you. That is harder than revenge, harder than proving a point, harder than getting the last word. Because it requires something the ego hates, withdrawal of investment. Not because what happened was acceptable, but because your peace is too expensive to keep spending on people whose relevance should have expired already. The fourth truth is that the people who live in your head usually represent one of your deepest unmet needs. This is where the issue becomes more personal. Why this person? Why this voice? Why this memory? Why not the hundreds of other people you have met and forgotten? Because certain people do not attach only to memory, they attach to need. A need to be chosen. A need to be respected. A need to be admired. A need to be understood. A need to be reassured. A need to be seen as enough. A need to not be abandoned again. When someone touches one of those deeper needs, they often gain a disproportionate place in your inner life, not because they are extraordinary, but because they connected to a vacancy inside you. This is why some people become obsessions, not because they are uniquely powerful, but because they awakened a hunger that was already there. And once hunger gets involved, the mind becomes sticky. It starts assigning larger meaning to their behavior. A delayed response feels personal. Distance feels dangerous. Approval feels intoxicating. Rejection feels unbearable. Their attention becomes more than attention. It becomes medicine, or proof, or emotional oxygen. At that point, they are not just a person anymore. They are tied to something your psyche still believes it cannot supply for itself. That is why the solution is not merely stop thinking about them. The real solution is to identify what your mind was trying to get through them. Security, validation, worth, closure, desire, power, redemption. Once you see the need clearly, you stop glorifying the person. You realize they were not carrying magic. They were activating dependency. And dependency is where manipulation and mental captivity begin. The fifth truth is that silence from others becomes torture when you are still waiting for them to define your value. Few things trap the mind like unanswered questions. Why did they pull away? What do they really think of me? Do they miss me? Did I matter? Were they lying? Would things have been different if I had said something else? Silence becomes painful when you make it interpretive, when you treat another person's withdrawal, vagueness, or absence as a message about your worth. This is why public opinion and private rejection are so powerful, not because they are always correct, but because they trigger interpretation. And once interpretation begins, the mind starts doing unpaid labor for the other person. You become both prosecutor and defense lawyer in a case where they never even showed up. This is one reason Montaigne matters here. He understood how much suffering comes from giving too much seriousness to what is unstable, external, and outside your true control. Other people's thoughts are among the least stable things in existence. They change with mood, insecurity, desire, convenience, envy, confusion, timing, self-interest, and projection. And yet people build entire emotional prisons around them. Silence hurts most when you still believe the silent person holds the final verdict on your significance. But they do not. No one should have that kind of authority over your inner life. The moment you stop treating their silence as sacred information, something loosens. It becomes what it really is: silence, absence, lack of clarity, a behavior, not a prophecy about your worth. And that shift matters because it returns interpretation to you. The sixth truth is that reclaiming your mind requires active mental eviction. You cannot passively wait for peace. You have to remove the intruders. That begins with refusing mental rehearsal. When the conversation starts replaying, stop feeding it. When the fantasy argument starts building, interrupt it. When the old face appears with the old emotional charge, do not sit down and serve it dinner. Cut the sequence. This feels unnatural at first because the mind is used to repetition. It mistakes familiar pain for necessary processing. But discipline begins where automatic loops are interrupted. You have to become ruthless here. Not cruel, ruthless. Because every time you let the same person occupy your mental space without purpose, you strengthen their place in your internal structure. Ask yourself, what is this thought producing? If it produces no action, no clarity, no wisdom, and no necessary decision, then it is not helping you. It is draining you. This is where many people fail. They treat every recurring thought as important simply because it recurs. But recurrence is not significance. Sometimes recurrence just means the loop has not been challenged. Mental eviction also means replacing passive rumination with directed thought. If you need to learn something, learn it once. Name the pattern, name the wound, name the lesson. Then stop revisiting the scene as if one more replay will change the ending. You are not here to keep a museum of people who hurt you. You are here to build a life too substantial to be ruled by them. The seventh truth is that peace returns when you stop making your mind available to everyone. Some people do not live in your head by accident. They live there because your inner boundaries are weak. You let in too much, too many opinions, too many judgments, too many comparisons, too many old voices, too many imagined conversations, too much social static. A person with no mental boundaries becomes a crowded room. Everyone gets in: parents, exes, critics, rivals, strangers, old friends, people from school, people from social media, people who underestimated them, people they want to impress, people they resent, people they fear. And because the room is crowded, the self grows faint. This is why inner peace requires selectivity. Not everyone deserves a seat at the table of your attention. You need standards for entry. Does this person build clarity or confusion? Do they deserve to be remembered this often? Are they part of your actual life or only part of your mental habit? Do they have wisdom or just volume? Are they shaping your mind because they matter or because they wounded you? Those are different things. A wound does not automatically qualify someone for permanent psychological relevance. That is one of the most important lessons you can learn. Just because someone hurt you does not mean they deserve to remain central in your story. Just because someone rejected you does not mean they should become your standard. Just because someone misunderstood you does not mean their version of you deserves permanent residence in your mind. You have to become more protective of attention, because attention is not casual, it is life force. Whatever gets repeated there starts shaping identity. The eighth truth is that detachment is not forgetting, it is refusing continued obedience. Many people think healing means you must erase the memory, erase the emotion, erase the person. But life rarely works like that. You may remember, you may still feel something, you may still understand the significance of what happened. Detachment does not require amnesia. It requires sovereignty. It means you can remember without serving, you can understand without circling, you can learn without kneeling, you can recognize what happened without allowing it to keep running your inner world. This is why detachment is so powerful. It breaks the hidden contract between memory and obedience. The contract used to say, because this hurt me, it must keep controlling me. Detachment says, it hurt me, but it does not own me. That is a different life. A stronger life. One where memories lose their command voice. One where old names no longer create immediate storms. One where your mind is no longer an easy place for unwanted people to camp. This is not coldness, it is discipline, emotional adulthood, self-respect. And perhaps that is the real point of all this. You do not reclaim your mind by becoming empty. You reclaim it by becoming owned by yourself again. By now, you can probably see the pattern clearly. People live in your head when they are tied to identity, ego, unmet need, unresolved repetition, emotional dependency, or weak mental boundaries. And that means they can be removed. Not overnight, perhaps, but decisively. By refusing rehearsal. By numbing the real wound. By withdrawing the need to win. By seeing the dependency. By rejecting their silence as a verdict. By building stronger inner boundaries. By treating attention as valuable. By choosing detachment over continued obedience. That is how you take your mind back. And when you do, something surprising happens. Your energy returns. The part of you that was trapped in old loops becomes available again for work, for peace, for focus, for new relationships, for your body, for your future, for sleep, for dignity, for presence. This is what people do not understand. Letting someone live in your head is not only emotionally painful, it is expensive. It steals concentration, momentum, beauty, possibility. It turns your life into a reaction to people who should no longer be central. You cannot build a powerful life while constantly hosting those who depleted you. So be honest. Who is still living in your head? Who still gets your mental energy after losing the right to it? Who are you still trying to impress, punish, understand, fix, win back, prove wrong, or recover from in ways that no longer serve your life. Name them. Then begin the eviction. Not with anger, not with performance, not even with closure. With refusal. Refusal to keep rehearsing what weakens you. Refusal to keep worshipping old judgments. Refusal to let the past occupy present attention. Refusal to donate mental space to people who are not building your future. Because your mind should not be a waiting room for ghosts. It should be a place of command. And the moment you understand that, everything changes. You stop begging for mental peace and start enforcing it. You stop asking whether they still think about you and start asking why you are still thinking about them. You stop treating every old emotional bruise like a sacred text. You stop making your inner life available to anyone who left a mark. And finally, maybe for the first time in a long time, your mind starts feeling like yours again. That is freedom. Not when the world finally behaves. Not when everyone apologizes. Not when every memory disappears. But when no one gets to keep living inside you without permission. Subscribe if you want to become harder to manipulate, harder to haunt, and impossible to control from inside your own mind.